friends. So, here we are once again with lecture number 35. This is the last and the concluding, the fourth lab practice session on the very important topic of personal interview, as we have all been doing this course together with each other. We know that in the employment communication process, the first step is CV writing or resume writing. The second step is group discussions, and the third session or the third step is personal interviews. We have had 3 lab sessions on personal interviews, and this is the fourth and the last one. Here we present to you lecture number 35 on personal interviews. This is part of module 7. This is the fourth and the last lab practice session. This is the mock session 4 on the interviewers as a panelist, as panelists for the interviewer. On the other side of the table, we have Mr. Kaustav Sengupta, Tanvi Ajit and Mohammad Hashim Ali. And in the role of the candidates who will be interviewed by Kaustav, Tanvi and Mohammad will be first of all Anupam Das and second Tirtho Nandi.
Hi Anupam.
Hi, how are you doing?
Yeah.
How was your day, Anupam?
Yeah, it was good but quite hectic, but I traveled more than a couple of hours.
Okay.
How much it was far, like from away from here actually?
It is the distance close to 60 kilometers, so I had to travel 40 to 45 kilometers by train, and the rest was by bus, and it was a heavy traffic.
So are you stressed?
Yeah, not like that, but
Are you feeling comfortable?
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's get into the interview. So can you just tell us something about yourself?
Yeah, myself.
Even I have.
You need not give the cliche response. Just give something that is like
Tell something which
something
is
is
unique.
different about you.
The thing is that myself, Anupam Das,
Yes.
I have completed my higher secondary and secondary examination from Konkan institution.
Okay.
And then I went to Bardwan University, and from there I have completed my degree on BE in Electronics and Instruments Engineering. Being graduated from there, I got involved in the social work service. I worked there for the marginalized section of the backward class for more than 2 years, and in 2018 I joined MHRM under the Human and Social Science Department of IIT Kharagpur. And in my personal life, my hobby is making the lyrics of rap music, and presently I am working with the Toastmaster in a leadership management program.
Okay, great. So you were working with a social group, is it?
Yeah.
So like, can you tell me something that you've learned out of the experience?
Yeah, the thing is that in the present scenario of India, many I say that many NGOs are there which is mushrooming day by day.
Okay.
But in the field you can see that only a limited number of NGOs that are working. And the thing is that while you go to do something towards the welfare of the backward class, you have to first face the challenge. That's the natural challenge. You have to fight with the adverse geographical location, very bad communication system. There will be no tower of your mobile, no supply of food, even drinking water. So you have to fight with these things first. And the later comes that from the colonial age, one thing, the outsiders, they time by time they entered to the tribal areas, and they made them full and for their own gain. And that's why nowadays I can feel that the tribals have lost their faith on the outsider, and they don't allow the outsider to share something of their life. They don't feel it free to share. So the linguistic difference is also there. So you have to break the barrier of the linguistic difference, and you have to make yourself as a part of their family life, so that they can feel that no, this person can do something for us. Then the work starts. Those are the previous 2 barriers. Then the work starts, and most of them are illiterate. So making them understand for the consciousness program, it's really a good challenge.
So given the fact that you worked in a social service area, and you said that they are very much disengaged, and they are very much stressed in the area, that different infiltrations have come up and they are not very much engaged. So say suppose you forget about the chief fund officer of this company, say suppose you are chief fund officer of that social service company, how do you keep them engaged? Suppose you have to bring them on a social cause, you have to make them aware and they are not coming to that particular cause, they don't understand that, how do you bring them on the platform?
Okay, the thing is that in every ethnical and social group in India, they have their own cultural some heritage. So we often, if you go to their colony, we often can see that they are practicing their own dance, their own singing patterns, and their own games, which is beyond the boundary of this civilized society structure. So we can promote those things because those culture are inherited to them, and we can promote those things. And nowadays, for an example, I can say that in the Durga Puja festival and in other festivals in Kolkata, the Chhau dance from Purulia, the Chhau dancers, they are bought by the puja committees, and the Purulia's local Chhau dance culture is going to get integrated with the urban culture of Kolkata. So that in this way, people are of the backward section of the society, they are getting involved to the mainstream of the society. We can do these type of things.
Fine.
Okay, as you told that you have work in this particular area and you are very much passionate to work this particular role. But don't you think that I'm not saying you are not fit for this particular role, but still how you will take the initiative, because you are going to work in an IT industry, right? So there is many person who is more experienced. Maybe you can say 4 or 5 year experience, or maybe there is different kind of persons there. So not having any kind of experience as a fresher, what will be your initiative in this particular area? As a being a fresher, how will you tackle the situation after going there?
Sir, frankly speaking, that I have only one big asset with me, that my confidence that I can do that. And I think that my personal belief, from my personal belief, I can say that if you're trying to make people understand, and if you're trying to share some idea with people, so when the people opposite of you are educated, the task for you will be very easy. But for working with the uneducated, illiterate people, the task is more challenging. So I have done those challenging tasks. So I have confidence that I can go well and I can deal with the educated people, because I think the task will be quite easy there.
So what kind of event or task which you have implemented in your past work, as you have done in social activities, like any kind of initiative which you can tell as an example?
On cultural basis, you see, sir?
No, any kind of event which you held there, so which you can say as a proof, like I have worked this in this means event or anything which you have had there.
Okay, we simply promoted their own culture, their own dance, their own songs, and their own cultural heritage, because that are going to be distinct day by day. We simply promoted that thing.
Okay.
Because whenever we try to get something outside and impose on their shoulder, they think from that point of time, the mistrust start to build.
Okay.
So can I ask you, like, if I was to ask you to state 2 qualities of yours that are that would make you the best CFO for this company? Just 2 qualities, brisk and clear. You just have to tell me.
Yeah, first I say that I am very down to earth.
Okay.
I can do according to the situation. And in the adverse geographical situation when I work, I can recall many days when I have spent in the station. I was to return to my head office, and I just last train, I missed the last train. I was compelled to just lay on the platform. So I'm very down to earth. I can work according to the situation and as per the requirement of the situation. And number second, I say that I am very optimistic in nature, because we can't control the situation ever. The adverse situation or situation comes, but if we can motivate at the time with the old situation, I can stay myself. I can keep myself happy, and also the people all around me happy in the adverse situation too. Because I can't change the situation, so better that I can change my mindset in the adverse situation, so that I can be happy at the time.
Okay. So I'll give you the situation. So we have certain employees going on site, like maybe for 5 years or 10 years and coming back. We also have like women taking the maternity leave and then coming back after a break. So they'll be like away from the company, and they'll find it difficult to get back into the work and fit into the like the organization will take some time. So like, can you suggest some ways in which we could like get them back and join the company and be part of it? Like we could make it faster, the
Yeah.
bonding process.
I think that when some pregnant lady is taking the maternity leave, or
Yes.
after her pregnancy she is taking maternity leave, in that leave period she is losing the contact with the company.
Yes, that is what.
Yeah. So we need to do something which can make her always virtually involved with the company. So the things I can say that if she has a doctor's appointment, we can send a cab to her house. The cab will carry her to the doctor's place, and just I can drop from the doctor's place. The cab will drop her at her home. The second thing we can do that if she wants to get an appointment, and if we have any contact from our company side, then we can arrange the appointment for her. Number 3 can do whenever the new baby lands up on the lap of this earth, then we can congratulate her. We can send her some flower vases to her house, and we as a company we can send a company representative to congratulate her and to take care for her health and these type of things. She will be virtually connected with the things, and if there is any event or program in the company, we know that she can't come, but still we can send the invitation letter to her that she will feel good, and then she will stay engaged.
Nice thought.
Good.
So one question. See, suppose you are the CFO and you have to do some fun activities for the people around here. You will see number of stressed people out here, some happy people out here, everything. So how would you measure the stress level or the happiness level, or how much they are stressed? How you do measure those? How do you gauge that particular area and come up with different
So
activities?
I think it will be not an uphill task if we arrange simple activities or games. If we arrange
Activity and game will come later stage. I want to know how you filter out people who are not happy.
That
How you do understand the emotional aspects of the people?
Yeah, that's the thing I'm saying, sir. If we arrange some program, some little program, and if we simply make it open to all, that whoever want to join, those who show interest, we join. So from where after these few activities, some cultural and sports, we can do some activities, and if we make a database there, we can see that some people will be there definitely who will be continuously avoiding these type of things and social engagement and these fun type of things. So from there we can see that these people are depressed or any other mental stress. So then this can be a good way of
So
filter
like
out.
if you have an employee who is like devoted to work, he doesn't want to come to any of the fun activities, but he wants to work continuously. So he's actually thinking from the company profits and everything. He's like doing good to the company because he's doing his work. He's actually overdoing his work. So he's actually doing his work very good and he's doing more. So he's not just that he's not coming to the so as a CFO. Do you think he has to be pulled into the fun activities, or should we just leave him?
No, ma'am. I think that he should be pulled into, because after all he or she is a human being.
Yes.
So if he is taking a lot of stress, probably due to go up in the industrial ladder or to make a better career, so in long run he can't do this. Whenever he is taking overload, overstress, in long run he can do this. So we should make people, especially employees, vivacious all the time.
It need not be that he's stressful. It could be that he doesn't like interacting with people,
Maybe
or
he's
he's
introvert.
like he's introvert and he likes to have his own space. So like there are people like that in the company. So how will you handle such people? Because they not come to any of your functions.
Yeah, I think that if people are introvert, then
Yeah.
they have some virtual barrier. They can't get engaged even when they are willing to get engaged, but somehow they
There are
can't.
some
There are some hindrances are
Yes.
there. So I can talk to them personally, and I can try to make them involved, because introvert people will also be, in some aspect will be harmful for the organization, because in organization to achieve some organization goal, mostly we prefer a team game. So how can if a person is introvert and can't come out of that narrow domestic world of his own world, then he can't get involved in the team game or in a team activity, group activity. So that will in long run more or less be harmful for the affect the company's growth and profit.
Okay. So since this CFO is a very new role coming up nowadays and you applied for it, you have heard about other CXO roles like CEO and CFO and all those stuff. Those are very well maintained roles, and though they come up much in the newspaper and all these things. So suppose if you're the CFO, and you have to allocate certain amount of time of the company for fun activities and leave rest of the company, rest of the time for those financial, marketing and all those activities. How would you manage in allocating those time, or rather how would you convince the CEO or convince the management that yes, fun activity is needed actually and I need some amount of people to work under me?
Yeah, I think that also the management people, they can understand that fun activities were needed, but sometimes they don't try to.
But you-
they
but
they
you
don't
not-
go to make it open, because they always run for the company's profit. So if I can make a good strategy while the company's profit or company's working environment will not be hampered by this fun activity, if I can make those things different, the fun activity will be another and the company's working environment will another, and none of them clash, then I think that people can understand that the hierarchy they will permit definitely.
So is it like, as I asked you earlier, I asked you about 2 qualities which like make you the best CFO. But then I'm also asking you, is there any reason that we should not select you? Like, can
You should
you
like to give as a
Yeah.
feedback
Is
from
there
your
any
end.
reason why
This
we
is the
should
reason
not
I think you are
select
not
you?
best for this
Do you
particular
think
role.
there is a reason? If at all there is a reason, what could it be?
It's definitely a challenging question for me, but still I try to answer.
Yeah, sure.
Don't try to
If-
give a positive answer.
Yeah, ma'am. If a company, they're purely such a company who run for the profit only, or not employee friendly, for that company, I think there will be very little opportunity for CFO, and for that company, I will not be hired definitely. And another thing is that if some company that asks me that if I have earlier made any strategy to do some fun activities and in the working environment, in the corporate environment, so I can't show it because I didn't work in the corporate environment, so I had definitely no strategy to do fund management in the corporate environment, and in that case I'll definitely not be selected, that I think.
Okay, Anupam, I think we're done.
Yeah, that's
and,
it. And do you have any questions to ask us?
Yeah, ma'am. I have one question that I have already went through the Wikipedia and I have learned all the things that you for the last more than a couple of decades your company is working well in the corporate and social responsibility. So now you are also hiring people for the fun activities. So will those sectors be different or it will be merged?
They'll probably have to work hand in hand, because you can always have like club activities of the CSR activities with the CFO's activities. So it has to be like a team activity. So we'll have representatives, we'll have discussions with, we'll have meetings with both the teams, and we'll design programs accordingly. So it will be a team effort.
And so I have another question that I have doubt. I can say.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
That if some officers fund management team is there, so how much involvement that team will have with the organizational hierarchy? How much involvement will the team have?
Actually, what we do, we just deal according to the like level of the associate who is working. Like there is some associates who is in an organization as a fresher. Maybe you can say just onboarded in the team as a fresher. So they will be deal according to the situation, and in the same time we are giving separate event or management or activities with the experienced guys less than bracket of 5-year experience. So we are going to make some kind of event which is in the level of that kind of associate. In the same time, we are going to separate some kind of event which is for the especially some more experienced guys, more than 10-year experience of guys, because sometimes you are going to make the level of mentality in the same frequency. So these kind of things which we used to do, and definitely once you will come in the organization, you will get to know all these things.
Okay, so have a good day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anupam.
Welcome.
Hi, Tirthu.
Hello. Good morning.
Good
Please take a
morning.
seat.
Thank you.
How was the day?
I think this was a very long day,
Okay.
and even then, I'm very excited to be here.
How you are excited because it was the last, means you are coming in the last. I think everybody is just
You've been
exhausted.
waiting for
and
so
you are
long.
still
We thought that you will be stressed out.
excited. How?
I think the anticipation was just building up.
Okay. Great.
Yes, yes.
So like let's start by just give us a brief intro. It need not be the cliched interview. Just give you like maybe some like what do you say?
Okay, I
Something's
understand.
different.
Yeah,
about
everybody
you.
has your resume. So
Yeah.
quickly go through the resume.
So, well, my interest in HR basically stemmed from my role as a team lead. So I was working as a team lead for around, so I would say 8 to 10 months, during which I was heading a 17-member team in different shifts. I was responsible for resource allocation, shift management, leave allocation, conflict resolution, as well as prompt collaboration, both intra and inter-team. So this is where I was exposed to a lot of HR activities, which made me envision a career in talent acquisition and L&D, I would say. So after that, I gave my CAT, and well, here I am.
Okay, so like can we know about your hobbies and what you like doing?
Well, I like playing chess.
Okay.
I like playing video games, and I have competed in a lot of, I would say, pan-Asian video game tournaments as well.
Okay.
So esports is probably going to be the next big thing.
Okay.
In which country it was developed, this game which you are talking about?
The game,
Yeah, actually,
Like
it's the game
can
which
you
are
like
talking
list
about,
what
just-
kind of games you play and then
well, basically I only play multiplayer games,
Okay.
which are spread over different countries. And since they were free and open source, a lot of different coders came together to develop them. So I cannot actually say they were made in one single country, but rather a coalition of different
So
ones.
you talked about the shift management, conflict resolution, and all
Yes,
this
sir.
and the stuff that you did. But you did a pure technical job, I think, in your previous company.
Well, I was a database administrator
Okay.
as well as a tech support representative. So
Okay.
I would say both sides of the coin I worked
Okay.
in.
So how do you bring in those technicalities in you and implement that in HR specific roles? How do you manage those? How would you bring in them?
Honestly, when I wanted to become an HR, I wasn't actually looking to carry forward my technical expertise into this role. I was looking for something completely different. I was always good at communication skills, as well as I was also interested in psychology and different kinds of. I was always used to do a lot of different personality tests.
Mhm.
So in those cases, that basically made me interested in HR, and I wasn't specifically looking at technical expertise to help me during my HR roles. As you can see, like I am more interested in talent acquisition because I want this basically the interview experience. I want to recruit in lateral hiring, B school campuses. I want to like travel to a lot of places as well.
Mhm.
So that this is one of my ways.
so can I ask you like what inspires you like generally?
So I would say like I live my life with two ideologies.
Okay.
One is that if you're scared of something, you should do it as much times as you can.
Okay.
And the other is that you should never be giving up.
So like what is one thing that you were scared of and you tried?
Okay, there is an interesting story about this.
Okay.
So when I was in my first year, I used to play a lot of football, and because I was a newbie and I was going up against a lot of seasoned footballers who were much more stronger than me, I would say, there was a mishap and I basically broke my knee.
Okay.
So I was laid out for around 2 months,
Okay.
and basically the aftermath of this incident carried on for a year or so. I wasn't properly able to play anything else. After a year, when I felt I was strong enough again, I started playing, decided to go play a football again.
Okay.
So, and the same thing again happened.
Okay.
That was the day I learned that there was a fine line between bravery and stupidity.
Okay.
No, given the fact that you mentioned that you closely observe people and you understand psychological aspects of it, you told that you're interested in psychology and the behavioral aspect of it. So how do you think you can measure them? Is it measurable, or how do you gauge them actually?
Well, honestly, there are a lot of classical psychological theories that say they can pigeonhole people into different categories. But even then, psychology is not an exact science, I would say. While you can broadly categorize them into different strata, I would say, that is, even then it depends upon the specific circumstances and the situations that the people actually are present in, because it can take 12 years for someone to actually know what a person can actually do. You cannot actually put a number on the limits of a person.
Okay.
And coming to your question, like if it can be measured or not, people are already measuring in analytics, right? So, however, analytics is still in its nascent stages, and I do not know if
How do you can use analytics in measuring psychological parameters? Can you do that? Can you? Is it okay to continuously monitor some people's emotional, private emotional areas? Because that's the way where how they behave when they are in deep private mode.
when you narrow it down to 1 or 2 persons, you cannot do it. But when you take a complete demographic or a workforce, you can broadly categorize people into different groups, I would say. You can categorize them on the basis of different parameters, ratings, as well as the kind of inputs they give about themselves unknowingly or knowingly.
Okay.
So in those cases, you can make a broad structure of where to place them. The other case is, if you are on the personal and on a case basis, those scenarios would be better addressed by an actual psychologist than an HR person. So
you believe that they should be continuously monitored?
I never said they should be continuously monitored.
But then how would you then choose the parameters? How would you measure the value? You don't come up with values if you don't continuously monitor.
You can always do a lot of service. A lot of service are always carried out in different big
people don't take
organizations.
service much seriously,
Yes, therein lies the problem of data analytics, right?
So how do you take on it?
So normally the different problems that actually come up, those can be solved by the HR with a rudimentary knowledge of psychology. But in the more severe cases where people are actually depressed or very frustrated, they cannot be actually given guidance by the HRs. They need to seek professional help for that. And
so you had you want to complete?
No, sure.
Okay, so you were working for
around 3 years.
Around 3 years. So, can you tell me something that you liked about their HR department and something that you would like to change about it?
Can I have a minute to think about this?
Yeah,
please?
sure.
Because the best thing about TCS HR was they could give individual attention to each and every employee.
Okay.
So there was a lot of HRs working there. I can always go to them and for your problems, they would always address
Very
it.
approachable.
Very approachable, as well as they want to be approached.
Okay.
And the other thing is they would always take care of it. As in there was a very robust mechanism in place. You could escalate it properly and it would be taken care of. Not like they would be pressed by the higher ups to take decisions that would be not in favor of the employees.
Okay.
If there was any justice that was not being served, that would be taken care of no matter what.
Okay.
The other thing that is, that can be worked upon, areas of improvement. So that would be the fact that initially, the L&D department, so initially we do a training period, right? It's called the ILP.
Yeah.
We are trained on something and then put into something completely different as per the requirements of the company. While I understand that the TCS is a very big company and some things like this will need to happen to meet the needs of the company,
Yes,
otherwise
definitely.
it will not be very profitable.
Okay.
This is something even then that can be taken care of in the recruitment stage itself.
Okay. So see, if you are the HR of a company and you see that you have certain ideas, but it doesn't fit to the budget, it doesn't fit to your ethics, or there are two cases. I'll first put it this way. It is not ethical to you. So but then it's for the company it's profitable. So how will you do? Will you support it, or how will you go about it?
If you could give me a example or a real life scenario, that would help me more in explaining this.
What can be not ethical? For example, there is a bell curve kind of rating system that you do. So we feel that certain people are forcefully put to the bottom of the rating curves, just for the fact that there are other people who are more experienced. So there has to be some people who have to come to the bottom and some who have to be put at the top scale. So they are demotivated, but then it is not ethical to do that. because they are doing their part, but they are forcefully put to the bottom. So in that case, what will you do? Because the other persons have got the higher rating because they are more experienced, not because they are doing much work. So in that case, what will you do? They have to be retained.
So I'm not completely understanding your scenario here. I would say, like, would you want me to redesign the bell curve, or like?
Yeah. So this is what the company is doing, but then you find it like it is not right. So how will you go about it?
Well, if it's in a company as vast as TCS,
Yes.
and the kind of work that TCS normally does, the bread and butter of TCS projects is mostly support, and the kind of jobs that are being done here, they do not need a lot of technical expertise.
Okay.
And in those cases, seniority actually counts for a lot more later on. Which is why the senior people need to be retained. So, for example, like you said, the people who are juniors, they are being forced to the bottom of the bell curve,
Yes.
even though they are performing very well. But we need to also take into account the fact that the senior professionals that are already working there have been working there for a long time,
Okay.
and in case they are probably the real problem solvers, and they are the ones who are mentoring the new ones as well.
Okay.
So in those cases, which is mostly prevalent in all of TCS, I think it makes sense that they should be given the higher curves in order to retain them, because otherwise it would take a lot more time. Suppose 5 people are given a C rating who are juniors,
Yeah.
and in order to put one senior person in the A rating. So I think like the impact that A rating senior brings is probably equivalent to those 5 people. And if you remove the senior, in order to make those 5 people progress to that level or that position, it would take 2 years at least. So in these cases, I think like TCS is probably having a much, I would say the cost benefit ratio is better for the senior person to have a higher rating than the junior person.
Okay.
It is unfair, I would say. It
Yes.
is, but
Is there any method that you can suggest to like make it more fair? Like, is there another system that you can suggest if you know any, or like you think this will do?
I think in a company as big as TCS, there is no other method to do this. The only way you can alleviate the symptoms of this particular malady is give more recognition to the juniors.
Okay.
Maybe not in the form of ratings, maybe in the form of like Performer of the Month awards, something that makes them
Something
feel valued and
Okay.
not just.
Okay. Suppose I'll ask a question. Say you were interested or you are interested in L&D, and you told that ECS has ILP thing.
I said I was interested in talent acquisition.
Okay.
work, so
I'll put a question in L&D only, since
Okay,
you
sir.
are also, you mentioned L&D, I noted down this L&D thing. So since you told that TCS has an ILP thing in the first place, and then they train people in a particular technology and they put in some other technology. So don't you feel there is a mismatch in that area where they are trained in one technology and put in another technology? And secondly, that will impact their career outcomes. That would impact really.
it definitely does impact career
outcomes. So how do you see that? How would you mitigate those problems?
I think
Because
that
because an incoming employee would want something to work on, and he or she is put into that particular project, and he is not removed from that, he is not released from that, but he wants to work in some other technology or some other area. So there's a mismatch.
Yeah.
So it obviously will impact employee productivity and all those things. So how do you go about it?
So the point we have to see here is that we have to tread a fine line between employee expectations as well as company policy or company requirements. So it can be basically, addressed from the recruitment process itself. When the people who are actually joining, they can be given a brief introduction, or they could be kept in the know-how that yes, even though you are being trained in this, you can be put into this, which is completely different from what you actually learned there, so that later on they don't have any mismatched expectations, so that like they don't get frustrated, like what am I doing here?
Okay.
So now it's
Thank you.
almost
So,
time to wind up, I guess. So
Only the last question is there.
Okay.
You were very inspired by the talent acquisition and everything work which was played in the HRO. Can you tell me the name of CHRO when you were working in TCS? This is the last question.
I'm sorry, I do not remember that.
Okay. And what is the name of our current company CHRO name? If you have gone through our website, have you any idea about what is the CHRO name of our company? This is the last question for you.
I'm not sure what the company name
Maybe
is.
both companies CHRO, you don't know, and you are really inspired.
Okay, I'll
from
wind
that.
up in this way. Do you have any questions for us? If you have any questions.
Honestly, no. I was very impressed by the total process here, and anything
too.
that I. Thank you.
I would like to ask you one thing. What
Sure.
makes you happy? Like just one thing that you makes you really happy.
Uh,
Anything.
I never expected this question though.
In brief,
I would say
Yeah.
progress.
Short.
Progress.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Tirtha,
Yeah,
that's it.
Thank you.
It was nice
Thank you so
interviewing
much.
you.
Sure. It was nice meeting.
Thank you.
Once again, I would like to express my gratefulness and thanks to the students of the first year of the MHRM program at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at the IIT Kharagpur. Without them, this course would have been incomplete. In fact, for all the 16 lab sessions, it's the very important participation which has formed the crux of this course. And in conclusion, I would like to thank all of you as well. Thank you and God bless you.